Alright guys, welcome back to Warhammer Stuff. Today we have Imperial Knights House Griffith versus the Orks, the Goths clan. So let's go ahead and check out the armies.
Alright, so today I'm bringing 2,000 points of Goths. Now, because of all the new changes to the Orc army list, points-wise and stuff, I wanted to try bringing essentially a horde of infantry because of the new Waaaagh rules and stuff, and Orcs have been turned into more of a small elite army list, but with the new changes I wanted to see how well Mass Horde would do. So for starters, we have one battalion led by a War Boss in Mega Armor. There is no model for the thing though, sadly. So he has Decrusha Armor, so +1 to his armor save, 4-up invulnerable save, and he does Mortal Wounds on a charge. He has the Warlord trait Ard's Nails, meaning -1 to wound him, and he has his Warlord armor. Then I have a Boy, which is one of the new Psychers, which I gave him the, he's from Beast Naga, so he has the Waaaagh energy. Here we go. He has Frazzle, Squiggly Curse, so basically he just has spells that do damage, mortal wounds. And of course the Eye of Mork, that's the main reason I took him. That's his shooting attack, which is very good compared to the Weird Boy, although the Weird Boy gives good buffs. I decided not to do buffs, even though that probably would have been better in hindsight. And then I have a Knob on Smash a Squig, because I brought some Squig boys, and I get to bring one outside of Force Organization's chart. So he is here to deal mortal wounds. And I only brought 3 characters, so that makes assassination undesirable. Alright, well, technically 4. Alright, for troops, I have 2 full squads of boys, 30 men, well, 29 boys, and a Knob with a Power Claw, because he always wanted the guy with the Power Claw to do good. And then I have 2 small squads of boys with a Knob and a Power Claw. And then I have 2 squads of 11 Gretchen. So, that's it for troops. And now we move on to elites. We have a Pain Boy, which actually has a item which is Super Cyborg Body. He has a 4-up invulnerable save, and he halves all damage done to him. I would have taken a Pain Boss, but he can only heal Beast Naga characters. And as tempting as that was, I'd have to change my Warlord, and it didn't really fit with me. And then we have Burna Boys, a unit of Burna Boys. It goes up to 7 Burnas and 1 Spanner. The reason is because for every 4 Burnas you need 1 Spanner, so once I got to 7 I'd have to include an extra Spanner, and it's just a waste of points for me. And then I have a truck for them, which has Squig Hide Tire, so a bunch of extra movement. And then we have 2 units of Commandos at 6 guys each, and the Boss Knob has a Power Claw. Then on to Fast Attack, we have 2 units of Squig Hog Boys. These guys are toughness 6, they're pretty strong in combat, they move pretty good. I was going to take bikes over them, but I needed more anti-vehicle just in case. I didn't know what my opponent was bringing. Well, actually my opponent told me, and then I totally forgot about it, and so I just wanted to build a general Orc list. So I have 2 units of Squigs. And then for heavy support, I have a unit of Death Dreads, with each have 2 Scorches and 2 Dreadclaws, and they are Big Krumpas. I gave them the unique keyword Big Krumpas. I get 1 per detachment, and so these guys have +1 to hit, so they'll be hitting on 2s. Then, for more anti-vehicle stuff, which was by chance by the way, I brought Mech Guns, which is with Smasher Guns. So these are heavy D3, strength 8, AP -4, D6 damage. So I brought 2 units of these, 2 of 2, and that is 2,000 points, noticeably larger due to the massive amount of point costs that Commandos and Infantry have taken off, including some of the characters. Alright, and that is my 2,000 point Goth army.
Alright you guys, so I have 2,000 points of Imperial Knights. First time playing them, so it'll be a little interesting. I've been wanting to play them for a while, and then the new book came out, and I was like, now is my moment. So I decided to start with a melee list. And then next time I'll do a shooting list, I guess. Just kind of give both a go. So I'm doing House Griffith, which means that anytime I made a charge move, was charged, or performed a heroic intervention, models get +1 attack, essentially. And then, so what I have is my Warlord is my Knight Warden, so he's the big boy up front. He has the Master of the Joust, which is the House Griffith Warlord trait, which means right after my Warlord completes a charge move, 1 enemy within D3 inches, or within an inch, sorry, so someone that he charged, On a 4-up, they take D3 mortal wounds. So that's hopefully going to be nice. And then he also has the Relic Endless Fury, which replaces his Avenger Gatling Cannon, which makes it so that every unmodified hit roll of 6 gives his gun 2 hits instead of 1, which I guess the Avenger Gatling Cannon did. Or, yeah. So anyway, so that's him. Other than that, he just has the standard loadout. I did add a Storm Spear rocket pod, just for extra damage. But yeah, he's a big boy. He's gonna punch stuff. Behind him, I have a squad of 3 Armiger Warglaves, and they have the melta guns, the thermal spears, and their chain cleavers. So they have to set up together, but then they'll be able to split off when doing what they're doing, and they also have objectives secured, and they count as 5 models. And then behind them is just a single Armiger Helverin. You know, I have a back objective, so I figured having one guy that has shooting is not a bad thing. And he has 2 Armiger autocannons and the regular heavy stubber. And that's pretty much it for him. Behind them, I have 2 big boys again. So I have a Knight Gallant, and this guy has both the fist and the chainsword and a Storm Spear rocket pod. So he's just a big melee death machine, but we will see how that goes. Because I only have a couple of models, so I gotta kind of prioritize what they're doing. He also has the Storm Spear rocket pod, and then over to his left is the Knight Paladin, who also has the Storm Spear rocket pod, and he has the chainsword, and the regular rapid fire battle cannon, you know, just the usual loadout for them, and that's pretty much it. And then I have the code chivalric, so the 2 chivalric codes I'm taking are protect those in need and refuse no challenge. And so protect those in need, I need to, if an Imperial Knight model from my army, or I gain honor points if someone performed a heroic intervention, or if they were in charge range of a group of models that was in engagement range of another one of my models. So basically anytime I can get a heroic intervention off or a charge, I am going to. And then I need to destroy enemy units with melee attacks. Is refuse no challenges pledge. So that is what I'm going to be going for, and we will see how that goes for me.
Alright, so for this mission, we are doing conversion, which is control 1, control 2, control more. And the mission parameters are, if our warlord dies, we no longer gain command points. We will lose 1 command point per turn if we do not control our home objective. We will gain 4 command points if we control our opponent's objective. We will gain 2 command points if we control at least 1 or more of this no man's land objectives. And yeah, that's a pretty straightforward and simple mission. Alright, going in, as for the orcs, I had a plan and then I completely forgot it. Now, so I have a lot of infantry, and so essentially I want to go up the board. So I'm using the L shapes. I want to protect my home because it's most likely Gretchen or maybe the mech guns are going to hold it. So I wanted to make sure that the home objective was covered with an L. The second thing was that I wanted to make sure there were L's or like things that I could walk through, but my opponent couldn't. And everything was going good until I placed the L in the center objective. It's 3 inches from everything else. But the problem is I realized I just cut off line of sight for all my mech guns, really. And so that accidentally screwed me over. And then the rest was me just placing stuff so that if I get either side, I'll be able to move up from cover to cover, hopefully, and getting close. So that was my plan going forward.
Yeah, so for me, I'm a melee army by design, this one at least. And so I didn't really want to deal with a lot of shooting, not that he necessarily has a lot of shooting. I mean, he has some shooting, sure. And I know with Titanic units, they don't usually get cover unless they're like completely covered. And so I chose a bunch of the tall blue things to do that. And then I just put some other stuff to kind of just change it up because we were both just placing tall blue things. So I was like, okay, well, let's try something different. So it'll be interesting because the layout of it, we probably should have had some kind of rule for it, being that I have knights and they're bigger bases. We probably should have had like a 6-inch bubble thing, just that way units can freely move. But for this game, it is what it is. I don't know. So we'll see how all the terrain kind of messes with my army. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. I don't know. But it will keep me from getting shot until I get in and step on them. So that's kind of cool.
All right. So for secondaries, for the Orks, this took a while. I did bring it down, obviously, because of their titanic nature. Engage in all fronts. That I should be able to do that relatively easily. And the Orks secondary get the good bits, which has been changed, and that's what took a while to figure out. Essentially, I just have to perform an action on the No Man's Land objectives, and it'll be completed at the end of my turn if it's a Ludus or Gretchen, or my next turn if it's not them. So that'll be interesting. Hello?
Hello. Yes. Sorry. I was just reading through my secondaries. So with my secondary objectives, I chose Duel of Honor, which is an Imperial Knights specific one. Basically, I have to find his warlord and his two most expensive units and beat them to death, preferably with my warlord. And then I have Engage on all fronts because I have a melee army, so I'm gonna, be trying to make my way forward. And then no prisoners because he's Orks. So mine were pretty straightforward. I didn't really have any qualms. I got them all real quick. So we'll see if I'm able to pull through on them.
All right. So I ended up being defender on roll-off, and I decided to start off by placing my Gretchen as close as possible to get the center objective because of the new get to good bits rules. Once that was done, I put my warlord next to it, gave him support from the pain boy, and put the war boy nearby. After that, the commandos went up to get deep in and flank, and then I started just pouring as many guys as I can around cover. The mech guns trying to get their places where they can get into some line of sight, but I know that it'd be kind of dangerous for them. It's really hard to say. And then I found there's like really no cover for me, so I'm kind of screwed on that. Well, we'll see how it goes. So overall, my plan was just to hide as much as I could behind cover, get ready to pounce in the center, and have some line of sight. And I had my Def Dreads in reserves. I should have probably put my smaller Orc squads in reserves as well. That probably would have helped better.
Alright, yeah, so I kind of had a plan, but at the same time I kind of don't have a plan, just because, there's only so many places they can go through. But I put my warlord in the middle because of my secondary. I gain the most points if he's the one that kills those things in melee. But of course I just put the big boys up at the front anyway because they do a lot of damage, and it also gives them the range to do like runarounds and whatever. And then basically I back them up with their Armiger Warglaves because those guys can fit in between different areas. And then obviously the Helverin is just holding the back objective because that's what he's on the list for. So relatively simple plan. Basically just run up and kill a whole bunch of stuff, and we'll see how we go. Alright, you guys, so as far as who goes first, I think due to the nature of his army and the nature of my army, it will benefit me to go first before he clogs the map with just his bunch of fat guys. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I'm in melee, so even if he does move up, it just makes it easier for me. But it'll probably give me a better advantage to go first, just for literally movement's sake. But if not, it doesn't matter so much.
So for me, I want to go second. So I have a few.
That works out.
I have a few. Well, yeah, we don't get to decide. So
well, yeah.
If I go first, I'm just going to clog up the center, maybe some of the sides. Some of my guys will get first. I don't think my opponent can charge me first in his first turn, even if I go first. because of how far I am away and some of the cover. Like, it's kind of unlikely. But if he goes first, he moves up, and I will get a massive first turn charge. And so it benefits me. There's some of my stuff that's exposed to some shooting, so there is that danger, but I am not too worried about it. Yeah, and so essentially, if I go first, it's not ideal. If I go second, that's my ideal. So that's all I got to say about it. So prepare to roll. I'm going to set this to 6 in case the thing freezes on me.
Pick out. Oh, mine got caught.
2. You're cocked.
Between a 4 and a 6, though. Where are you going?
Why does it freeze every second?
Oh, but it is a 6.
Alright, I guess I got what I wanted. So, Knights, turn
both of
1.
them. Alright, you guys, so command phase, the Knight Gallant gave the Armiger he's next to +1 weapon skill. The Warden gave the Armiger that's also on the middle objective. He counts as 10 models and objective secured. And then the Knight Paladin gave the Warglaive next to him a reroll hit and wound roll. So each of the big boys had a bondsman ability, and they gave it and passed it off to each of these Armigers. And then as far as movement goes, I just moved up the table. Pretty straightforward. Alright, you guys, so for shooting, I did a couple of things. The Knight Gallant was able to peek just around the corner and see the mech guns. He was able to do 5 damage to one of them, but it lived. And he's the melee guy, so he only had the one gun. And then the Armiger Warglaive in the middle used his thermal spear to shoot at the mech guns, which all 3 went through, all 3 wounded. I forgot to roll them separately, so without even a roll-off, 1 lived with 1 wound. Otherwise, they both would have died.
Yeah, you should have declared that beforehand, but oh well.
Actually, wait, I rolled a 6, a 5, and a 1.
No, you rolled a 5, a 4, and a 1.
Oh.
Alright. Anyway.
Oh, yeah, so. Anyway, he should have been dead, but he is alive with 1 wound. But we'll deal with him later. And then the Knight Paladin could see the corner of the commandos.
Yeah, in the bottom right.
So he shot at them, but he kind of had some crappy rolls. And then they had some decent saves.
Yeah, because the commandos, when touching cover, get like +2 to their save, and so they had 4-ups. And I rolled 3 6s, so...
Right, so he was able to save them. And... so only two commandos died. So yeah, so that was it for me there. Alright, you guys, so basically, because some of my guys are so big, they weren't able to do charges, namely my Armigers. But the Knight Gallant and the Knight Paladin were, and they rolled well, but also being Questor Imperialis, they have +1 to their charge rolls anyway, so... yeah, so just they got in, and hopefully they'll be able to kill off these commandos. I would like to think that they could do that. Alright, you guys, so for this combat phase, essentially what happened was my 2 knights killed them. And that was it. No, so basically the Knight Gallant had 15 swings and the Knight Paladin had 12 swings. They almost all hit and they almost all wounded, and they were -3, so it bypassed their armor entirely, and they just, the little squad of 5 or 6 each just died. So that's kind of cool. Granted, they're just commandos, so we'll see how they hold up against the rest of the army, but that was kind of cool. So yeah, that was the fight phase. Alright, you guys, so for points, obviously no primaries yet, but for conversion, the mission secondary, I was able to get 2 points, just because I had controlled a no man's land objective. And I would have had engaged in all fronts, but I was too close to the border in the corner. I mean, yeah, and so I wasn't able to get that one. No prisoners, I technically have points for it, but I did also were able to get a honor point for my refuse no challenge oath. So basically, if 2 or more enemy units have been destroyed by melee attacks, I gain 1 honor point. So I did that.
Alright, so for this movement phase, it's going to be big. So I declared Waaaagh. Going to get my 5 up invulnerable save, my +1 strength, and the ability to run and charge. So essentially what I'm going to do is, the idea is to hit the main targets, which is the Knight Gallant that's trying to barrel into my lines, and I'm trying to get to the top north objective because I feel that's the most quote-unquote safe, empty, open, however you want to say it, and try to stall the other ones. So the War Boss had one of the worst movements. So my purple squad moved up, ran, made it pretty far. Green squad moved up, pretty much surrounded the Knight Gallant. My guns, mech guns, did not have to move, moved up some of my Gretchen. My Gretchen took the center stage. They cannot do their get good bits right now. I just can't do that because, well, they ran, so they can't do the objective thingy. Red squad moved up, wrapped around the Gretchen to be able to hit both the Armiger Warglaive in the center and the Night Warden, his general. My Knob on Smash the Squid moved up to support. The other Squighog boys moved down to the bottom to get there. And my Orc boys moved up and supported them. As far as my War Boss, so the green boys, when I moved them, the big squad, the problem is I had to use my reroll on them to get them to move more than 1 inch. And then when my War Boss went to move, I wanted to get him in combat with the Armiger in the center. He absolutely failed. He rolled a 1, so it's very unlikely that he's going to be able to get in. I mean, well, okay, it's a 6. Okay, maybe he'll get in. Pain Boy moved up in support. Whir Boy moved in to get in range of the Knight Gallant. And so basically I'm swarming all my objectives. If I can, hopefully I can do a tremendous amount of damage in this fight phase. Alright, for my Psychic phase, my Whir Boy goes up to bat. And so he activates his first power, Frazzle, which affects all enemies within 9 inches. And the Knight Gallant is at 8.9 inches. And then the Armiger Warglaive is also within range. And he basically hits them for mortal wounds. He does 3 mortal wounds on the Knight Gallant, and he does 2 mortal wounds on the Armiger Warglaive. Then he does the Squiggly Curse, which is one of the worst powers that could be used against them. So basically, you roll a dice for each model in the unit. So there was one. It went off on a 7, and I rolled a 4 up and did 1 mortal wound to the Knight Gallant. And now the Whir Boy, because he's in range of within 12 inches of more than 20 Orc boys, he gets to cast a 3rd power, so he casted his Smite. And so he cast Smite on the Knight Gallant and got a Super Smite, and he rolled 4, so he did 4 more mortal wounds. So my my Whir Boy has done a total of 10 mortal wounds. Absolutely incredible. Alright, so for my shooting phase, everything missed except the stuff that didn't. So, basically, my Squighog boys are next to the Knight Gallant on the right, or the left. Shot, missed everything. My mech gun, on the other hand, shot, did something. My 2 mech guns below that shot and did a little bit of something. And then my green giant squad of Orc boys shot into the Knight Gallant and did 2 wounds to it with its pistols. The purple squad fired at the Knight Gallant, and the Armiger Warglaive above it did nothing. Red squad fired at the general, did 2 wounds to it, but he saved them both. My War Boss fired at the Armiger Warglaive, did nothing. The Pain Boy shot, did nothing. And that was pretty much my shooting phase. Alright, what a massive charge phase. So I'll start from the left. The Squighog boys charge against the Knight Gallant, they make it in. The green squad charge against the Knight Gallant and swarm it. The red squad, this is where I make a mistake, or no, the purple squad charge the Armiger that's up top, and they get it and surround it. Then where I make my first mistake is my War Boss should have charged next to hit the Armiger. I just forgot that, and had the red squad charge both his Warlord, Knight Warden, and that Armiger. And so I really screwed up right there, but they were able to get there, and they are within coherency. There is an Orc. The squad is not cut in half. One is within 2 inches of 2, so they are in coherency, just barely. Then the Knob on Smash the Squid charges Warlord, hit him, and then did a total of 3 mortal wounds to him based off his ability, which is when he charges. He rolls 5 dice against the unit he charged, and for every 4 up, he does a mortal wound, so that was pretty good. The Squighog boys on the bottom tried to charge the Knight Paladin on the bottom, and they failed their charge twice, because all Orcs get rerolls. And yeah, that was a very long charge phase. One thing to note is, I forgot to mention, in the shooting phase, my truck had the Burna Boys, and they shot at the Knight Gallant, and they miraculously did 5 wounds to it that he didn't save. So, just FYI. Alright, the fight phase. This is the real meat grinder. So the red squad, I knew he could interrupt, so I chose to go with the red squad first in the middle. And so I had 18 guys swing on the Armiger Warglaive. They were the ones who could reach it. And they actually did really well. They did 10 wounds to it. It was incredible because I have exploding 6s, Waaaagh adds +1 strength, and the Goths have 1+ strength on their charges. So they were hitting on strength 6 and exploding 6s, so that went really well. And also being within 6 inches of the War Boss and Mega Armor, they had +1 to hit, so they were hitting on 2s. So did 10 wounds to the Armiger Warglaive. And then the Night Warden, can't remember how many he took, but he took many wounds from the guys and the Boss Knob. And then my opponent interrupted with his Night Warden around the green squad. And so he focused all his attacks on the knobs on Squigs because he figured they were a greater threat to him because they were a little bit anti-tank, and he wiped them out entirely. The 5-up invuln saves didn't save him. And then my Orc boy swung and completely just wiped out the last 6 wounds. Overkill. The knob didn't even get to go. And then I had my purple Waaaagh swing on the Armiger Warglaive, and they did 11 wounds to it, with the boss knob included. So it survived just barely. And then my knob on Smash-a-Squig swung at the Night Warden and did like, I can't remember how many he did. He did like 3 or 4 wounds, maybe around 5. And that was really it for my swings. Then he swung back, his Armiger up top, slaughtered my purple squad pretty much, or the small amount that was in it. And then the Night Warden, his Warlord swung and just completely squished my knob on Smash-a-Squig. So here, the funny thing is, only 1 attack went through, and I failed the 5-up invulnerable save, and it did 6 damage to him, and he had 5 wounds. So if he would have just made that 5-up, he would have survived all the attacks from the Night Warden. He's seriously wounded. The Night Warden can only hit on 5s right now because it has only 5 wounds left. And then his Armiger Warglaive on the side that was at full health swung, killed 3 of my Orc boys. I saved a bunch of them. I saved like 4 of them because that 5-up invulnerable save. And then the wounded Armiger swung on my guys, and I saved that as well. So far that went really in my favor. Alright, so for points, I control the center. So he has what counts as 10 models as OBSEC, but I have 14 that counts as OBSEC, the Orc boys. And so I have the center objective, so that makes me get the conversion. I was not able to get to good bits. I had no one who could do the objective at this point. I had... Engagement on front is really hard to get now. So I am in every single table quarter, but my big green squad is within 6 inches of my deployment zone. My purple squad is within 6 inches of his deployment zone. My red squad is in 2 squares, and my Squig boys are also in the middle of 2 squares, so that doesn't work. Bring it down. I killed one of his big knights, so that's 4 victory points right there for one with 20 or more wounds. So far, doing really good with that. And it's really turning around. It's like I basically, when it comes to wounds, I essentially killed half his army, and what he has surviving, it really sucks at fighting right now. His knights really got bad. Like his warlords hitting on 5s. All the Armigers that survive in melee are hitting on 5s. He only has 2 left that are fine. So he has 1 big guy that's good and 2 Armigers that are good. So right now, this is really in my favor. The 5-up invulnerable save did noticeably help. It saved around 7 dudes so far, which actually is quite a lot.
Alright, you guys, so for the movement phase, I only had 2 things that were out of combat, which is the Knight Paladin and the Armiger Helverin, the shooty one. So shooty one moved just a little bit to where he could see the green squad, and the Knight Paladin moved in close to the Squig Hogs and the little squad of Orc boys behind them. And yeah, so that was it. Alright, you guys, so essentially I did a bunch of shooting and didn't actually do a lot. So Armiger Warglaive down up with a small squad of Orcs. I think he killed 1. I don't actually know what he did.
Yeah, he killed 1. That 1 killed 1 of the purple squad. Also, by the way, we found one make to note, I subtracted 2 CP to do basically I forgot to do the morale phase. So because it messed up his movement in the movement phase, essentially, we just glossed over it. I paid 2 CP to just make them be there, so they wouldn't fail. So otherwise it'd be unfair. So because I messed up there, so I have only 1 CP left, and that's why the purple guys are still there. But he killed 1 in shooting.
Yeah. And then the Armiger Helverin in the back shot at the green squad, killed 2 of them because he rolled a whole bunch of saves.
Yes, that 5-up in gold is coming in clutch now.
Yeah, the Armiger Warglaves, both of them shot into this squad. I think they killed maybe 1 or 2. And then the Warden shot, he killed 5 with his Flamer, and then I don't know if he did anything else, maybe 2. 2 more, so he maybe killed like 7 of them, I'm not sure. Then the Knight Paladin split his fire. Apparently that was the worst thing I could have done. I killed 1 Squighog boy and 1 Orc boy.
Because I keep rolling 5-ups, it really has come in clutch now. My giant hordes are not being whittled down.
Yeah, so that was not great. But other than that, well, I mean, that was it. So pretty sad shooting phase. We'll see if melee phase is better. So my Knight Paladin charged his Squighog boys. Alright, you guys, so my Knight Paladin charged in. He hit on the Squighog boys. He killed them. Easy enough. And then he swung with his small Orc boy squad and he killed my Armiger down there. Then I swung with my full health Armiger. I killed 4 guys, maybe?
Yeah.
And then he swung back. He killed my Armiger and did 1 wound to my Knight Warden. Then my Knight Warden swung and did nothing. So, not a super eventful combat.
So my purple squad up top successfully killed the Armiger there. And then my red squad swung and finished off the Knight Armiger that was in the middle. And then the rest of my guys swung all on the Knight Warden, but only did 1 wound. It's absolutely terrible. It should have died. Alright then. And that was it for the fighting phase.
Alright, so for points, I got nothing. So, except 2 primaries at the beginning. And that was it.
Yeah, and also for the morale phase, the red squad in the middle failed their morale, but only lost a total of 3 guys in total. It was very good.
Yeah.
Alright, we decided to call it. It was going way in one side, and as well, after the fact, I discovered that I misread the Waaaagh ability, and I missed something, so apparently I would get +1 attack. So I, in fact, I missed a quarter of all the attacks I could have done, so that would have probably slaughtered even more. So MVP, LVP for me as the Orks. Actually, let me yes. For the Orks, LVP. So it's actually quite a tie. So my Death Dread, Squighog boys, and Pain boys I would consider good runners-up. Pain boy literally did nothing the entire game. Even his Feel No Pain aura never came into play. Death Dreads never got a chance to come in. Although I could have brought him in, I didn't bring him in my 2nd turn because I was going to bring them into my 3rd turn so that they could get behind and attack my opponent's main home objective. Because by then they were in reserves, they could have done that. And so LVP straight up is the Squighog boys because they were on the table, and unlike the Pain boy, Squighog boys did literally nothing. They just died. Straight up. I mean, strategically valuable is that they took the hit so that the other important things would live. And then my LVP, it's a close tie between my War Boss, who didn't fight, and my Orc Sluggas, who just beat all these Titans to death. And so, the reason why it's kind of a tie is because the War Boss gave everyone +1 to hit. A lot of 2s made it into the swing. Really, really helpful. And the Orc Boys, Sluggas, they did well. So it's close to a tie, simply because the buffs he gave really helped. And these guys, they really pulled their weight. The 5-up invulnerable save from Waaaagh is really useful. I didn't notice it at first, but all the tiny, picking off, whittling down my army didn't happen. I saved a lot of 5-ups. Well, I kind of have a tendency to do that. But just straight up, he did incredibly well. We did a Theory Hammer match between the War Boss and the Knight Paladin. And he held his own and survived. and it didn't take a single wound, but did some good wounds back. So that was pretty good. So what's your LVP MVP?
Well, my whole army kind of didn't do anything, so they're kind of all LVPs, but I think Knight Gallant, I guess argument could be made, he was the most MVP of all the losers. Just because he killed the most.
He killed a squad of commandos. He killed a squad of squid boys.
Yep.
And then he died.
And that was it.
And then he got shot by
Yep.
everything. Yeah.
And then Knight Paladin, LVP. He didn't really do anything. His shooting wasn't very good. Granted, the 5-up invuln save, I think, saved you a lot.
I mean, so he killed
I would say it saved you quite a bit.
So he killed a squad of commandos and a squad of squig boys, just like the other guy. So just so they had the same achievements.
Oh. Well, he felt worse.
It's like, this is the one thing I noticed.
No, because he had a round of shooting and he wasn't able to do like anything with it.
Ah. Okay. So one thing I am noticing is in Games Workshop games is that the big, strong, tough guys, like these guys are very strong individually. They are incredibly powerful. But they're supposed to fight off against hordes or really strong anti-tank or stuff. And so as powerful as they are, they're not that powerful for what they need to do. So you always have to be more cautious. Like,
So I have. Gosh, his face just stuck to me.
Yeah.
I have two theories on them. One is that their army needs to be more hybrid, or actually, okay, 3 theories. Needs to be more hybrid, so in mix of some heavier shooting, they need to be the ones to get those initial charges, at least early on in the game. And then I think they can't stand alone. I think they need more layers of combat or whatever. So I don't think they can be split as evenly as some army.
Yeah.
Of course, I've only played it this one time, but based off of what happened in this game, these are my theories, and this is what I'm gonna go working forward on.
So when I play like Age of Sigmar with the Great Unclean ones, as powerful as they are, they need a unit of support to reduce the amount of bodies that are on them. Granted, like this was a massive horde, and I was testing out a horde, and so there really wasn't the greatest anti-tank against you. It was just like ridiculous amounts of shooting. And the Burna Boys really did.
It ended up really just being numbers. It's odd to me that they don't have any way to do any kind of repair. It's like there's no way to gain back wounds. Yeah, they have a lot of wounds, sure. Or to like adjust their saves or anything. Like they just have 3-ups. I mean, I guess maybe they use their toughness as kind of a preventative wall, but and to be fair, I rolled pretty crap on all my saves, so there's that too. So
yeah, but
maybe if I rolled a normal amount on my saves, they would be. I guess the game would still be going, but
overall, what I think is that I was able to play entirely to my strengths. I got a first turn charge with almost my entire army with ridiculous amounts of buffs. So you basically you challenged my strength. You're like pretty good in a lot of things. You're very good in a lot of things, but I am incredibly good in combat. And just the absolute sheer number of my guys, especially with the 5-up invulnerable saves, really cut you down to size. Maybe if you spent the first 2 turns peppering me, weakening me, reducing my numbers a bit, and then you getting the first turn charge, you getting the charge.
Yeah, because they have huge movement ranges. And so that probably, so I mean, it is the first time playing them, so kind of getting this kind of just wading in with them was interesting. And so I think there's a lot more map control that is required with the Knights than just kind of running them forward and smushing stuff.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So I don't know. I did like them though. It was kind of fun playing them. But next time I'll have to figure out a bunch of. I'll have to think a little bit more about how they're being played. Because even though their stats are good, they're not like standalone good.
You have to. So I heard it best that playing Knights is like chess. You moved all your major stuff towards the center where I could easily swarm you, and I got the most of my troops hitting you, and so that really affected you. So overall, I think it's just movement. You can't take on the whole world. Probably if your warlord was surrounded on right and left with 2 armigers, I wouldn't have been able to completely surround him and do as much damage. I'd have a lot less guys hitting him, and so he would have lasted longer. The armigers would have spaced him out more, and maybe if you would have gotten to combat on turn 3, your first turn would be moving to get line of sight everywhere and just start shooting. And when I move up on your second turn, you pull back a little bit, try to hold on to the objectives if you can or you can't, and do a lot more concentrated fire. And then on your third turn, try to get like a good charge. Or you could like try to collapse one side of the game board and then sweep like a hammer anvil.
So I think they're just a much more tactical army. I think they do have a lot of strengths in shooting and in melee, but I think because of how few they are, you can't just have an evenly spread board. I think you've got to kind of pick, and then just be tactical. And they all have like 12-inch movement, so that's nice.
Yeah, you can easily outdo me. You were in combat because you chose to be.
Yeah,
so you more like have to play the second half of the game. Alright, so I guess
I think that makes sense.
Alright, so that's it for a good first try. GG's.